Okay, so you want to open a restaurant. Find a spot, hire a chef, put some tables down, watch people show up hungry. That's the plan in your head, and it's not a bad plan. Walk into any decent restaurant on a Friday night, and it looks like the easiest business in the world. Every table is full. There's a line at the host stand. The bar is 3 deep. You watch that scene, and you think, this place must be printing money. More covers, more checks, more money. Simple. Here's the problem. You are looking at the 1 hour of the week that lies to you the most. The truth is that a restaurant is not really a food business. It is a real estate and inventory turnover business that happens to have a kitchen in it. And the moment you understand that difference, everything about how a restaurant makes money and how it quietly loses money starts to make sense. Let's start with what it actually costs to get in the door, because the price tag is a lot more complicated than lease a space and buy a stove. There isn't one type of restaurant. There are several, and each one is really a different business wearing the same apron. At the bottom end, you have the fast casual concept. Counter service, a tight menu, no table service, usually needing $175,000 to $500,000 to open. Above that sits the full-service casual restaurant, the kind with servers, a bar, and a real kitchen line, usually needing $400,000 to $850,000, depending on the city. Above that, fine dining, which can run $750,000 to well over $2 million once you account for a chef's table kitchen, a wine program, and finishes that are supposed to feel effortless. And then there's the small brutal category, the food truck or ghost kitchen. No dining room at all, sometimes launched for under $100,000, that doesn't sell an experience. It sells the food and nothing else.
Each of these is a different bet on the same underlying question. Do you make your money from a huge number of people paying a little, turning fast, or a small number of people paying a lot, staying slow? That single decision shapes every other number in the business. Now, here's where the naive mental model starts to break down. You think the expensive part is the dining room, the chairs, the lighting fixtures. It isn't. The expensive part is turning an empty box of a building into something that can legally cook food for the public. A commercial landlord will usually ask for first, last, and a security deposit, sometimes 3 to 6 months of rent, before you've touched a wall. Then comes the build-out. A commercial kitchen hood and fire suppression system alone can run $20,000 to $60,000, and it's not optional. It's code. Grease trap installation and the plumbing to support it runs another $5,000 to $25,000. Walk-in coolers and freezers, built to hold food at safe temperatures for a full service, run $10,000 to $40,000 installed. And then there's the part almost nobody budgets for correctly: ventilation and makeup air. A commercial kitchen produces enormous heat and grease-laden vapor, and the amount of exhaust air it removes has to be replaced with fresh air pulled in from outside, or the whole system fights itself. Building codes size this off the hood's exhaust rate, not a guess. A single working kitchen line can require an exhaust system rated for several thousand cubic feet of air per minute, and matching makeup air units to replace it. That's not a vent fan. That's a full mechanical system, and it can cost $30,000 to $100,000 before a single plate goes out. Add up the deposit, the build-out, the health permits, the liquor license if you're pouring alcohol, the point-of-sale system, the opening inventory, the pre-opening staff training, and a cash reserve to survive the slow early months. And even a modest mid-size full-service restaurant can require $400,000 to over $1.5 million just to unlock the front door.
So far, so good. Now let's talk about what can go wrong. Equipment is the next trap, and it's a bigger one than people expect. A single commercial range can cost $3,000 to $30,000. A combi oven, the workhorse of a modern kitchen, runs $10,000 to $30,000 on its own. Add reach-in fridges, prep tables, a dish machine built to survive hundreds of cycles a night, and the equipment bill alone for a mid-size kitchen can land anywhere between $75,000 and $300,000. Here's the decision that trips people up. Do you buy the equipment outright or finance it? Buying feels safer, no monthly note hanging over your head, but it drains your cash reserves right when you need them most, in those first uncertain months before covers build up in numbers. And commercial kitchen equipment runs hard, hours a day, every day. It wears out faster than a home kitchen ever would. Financing sounds like the smart move. Small monthly payments, cash stays free. Here's the catch. Equipment financing for restaurants can carry interest rates well above what a standard business loan would, because lenders know restaurant failure rates are high. And the note doesn't care whether your dining room is full. If covers dry up and you have to close, the payments don't stop with you.
Neither option is wrong, but whichever one you pick, you've just locked in a large fixed cost that has to be paid every single month, regardless of how many people walk through your door that night. Now, location. This is the decision most first-time owners get wrong because they think a good location just means foot traffic. It's more specific than that. A restaurant's realistic draw for regular repeat business comes almost entirely from within a short drive or walk of the building, with destination dining being the rare exception that depends on it. Inside that radius, the income level and dining habits of the people living there have to match your price point. A restaurant with a $40 entree average cannot survive in a neighborhood built around a fast casual budget. And a high-visibility storefront in a major city can cost anywhere from $40 to $150 per square foot per year in rent, compared to $15 to $30 in a suburban strip. Pick the wrong side of that gap, and you've committed to a rent bill that requires a covers per night number your neighborhood simply cannot supply. Now we get to the part of this business that actually explains everything else: the table. Picture two guests, except instead of one being good and one being bad, imagine every party that walks in falls into one of two futures. In one future, they linger for 2.5 hours, order an appetizer, 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, and dessert. In the other future, they're in and out in 40 minutes, order 2 entrees and tap water, and leave. Which of those two tables is more valuable to the restaurant? It depends entirely on one number nobody outside the industry thinks about: turns per table per night. A restaurant doesn't really sell food. It sells square footage of dining room, rented out in blocks of time. A 4-top that turns 3 times in an evening at a modest average check can out-earn a 4-top that turns once at a much higher average check. This is why a packed dining room lit for a romantic 2-hour dinner and a packed dining room built for a fast casual 40-minute turn are two completely different financial machines wearing the same "we're busy" appearance. Industry data consistently shows food cost sitting around 28 to 35% of revenue, and labor another 30 to 35%. Add those together, what the industry calls prime cost, and you're already at 60 to 68% of every dollar gone before rent, utilities, insurance, or a single marketing dollar is spent. That's the whole game. The dining room being full tells you nothing about whether that combined number is under control. There's a seasonal wrinkle to this whole picture that's worth walking through because it shapes the entire financial calendar of a restaurant. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, and New Year's Eve can each generate single-night revenue that rivals an entire slow week in January or August. Restaurants lean into this hard. Prefix menus, mandatory deposits, tightly timed seating windows to force extra turns out of those nights. But the same spike that comes in fast fades just as fast. January is brutal for the industry-wide. Post-holiday spending fatigue collides with resolution dieting, and slow Tuesdays in a normal month can run at a fraction of weekend covers. Experienced owners don't panic about this. They plan cash flow around it, using the big nights to build a reserve that carries them through the predictable dead months. The owners who get caught off guard spend the holiday windfall as if it were a permanent baseline instead of the spike it actually is. There's also a structural choice sitting underneath all of this. Build an independent restaurant or buy into an established franchise. A franchise gives you a known brand, a proven menu, standardized supply chains, and often much better pricing on food through corporate purchasing power. That's valuable, especially for a first-time owner. But it isn't free. Franchise agreements typically require an upfront fee of $30,000 to $75,000, an ongoing royalty of 4 to 8% of gross revenue, and an additional 2 to 4% of revenue into a shared marketing fund.
An independent owner keeps every dollar the business generates. A franchise owner is permanently sharing a slice of the top line in exchange for brand recognition, which can be worth it, but only if the extra covers that brand name attracts are large enough to cover what you're handing back every month. Now, here's where the psychology becomes just as important as the math. Why do people keep coming back to restaurants that, if they actually calculated cost per bite, aren't a great deal? Part of it is ritual, the anniversary dinner, the Friday night out, the "we always get this" order. Part of it is what behavioral economists call anchoring. A $38 entree looks reasonable next to a $52 one on the same page, even if neither is really what the ingredients cost. And part of it is pure habit, a loyalty app punch card, a reservation system that remembers your name, small design choices that make returning feel like less friction than trying somewhere new.
The physical design of the restaurant reinforces this, whether guests notice it or not. Warmer, dimmer lighting slows people down and, historically, has been shown to encourage lingering and additional ordering, while brighter lighting near a counter service concept subtly signals order, eat, move along, and speeds up turnover. Music tempo is chosen deliberately too. Faster tempo music in a fast casual concept unconsciously speeds up chewing and ordering pace, while slower music in a full-service dining room encourages guests to relax into a longer, higher-spend meal. None of this is decoration. It's all aimed at the same target, shaping how long a table sits and how much a guest is willing to add to the check while they're sitting there. And restaurants know exactly how valuable your data and habits are, which is why loyalty programs and reservation platforms are rarely free to the business either. Third-party delivery apps, which many restaurants now depend on for a meaningful share of revenue, typically take a commission of 15 to 30% per order. That's not a small fee. On a thin prime cost margin, a third of every delivery order disappearing before the restaurant sees it can turn what looks like a busy night into a night that barely breaks even. Reservation platforms often charge per cover fees on top of a monthly subscription. None of this shows up in the dining room. All of it shows up in the bank statement. This friction has not gone unnoticed by regulators either. No-show policies, deposit requirements, and cancellation windows on reservations have drawn consumer complaints in several cities, and some jurisdictions have begun requiring clearer disclosure of these terms before a guest is charged. Keep this in mind because it tells you something important about the business you're considering.
A restaurant that could reliably fill its dining room with guests who show up as booked wouldn't need deposits and strict cancellation windows in the first place. The fact that no-show policies are such a core part of restaurant operations tells you the business already knows a meaningful share of its bookings won't walk through the door. Before we get to what can go wrong, there's a second layer of hidden cost that catches almost every first-time restaurant owner off guard, and it has nothing to do with food. It's the music. Playing background music in a dining room is not the same as playing it at home. In the United States, any business playing music for its customers is legally required to pay for a public performance license, and there isn't just one organization to pay. Several performing rights organizations each represent different songwriters and publishers, and a restaurant typically needs to be licensed with more than one at the same time. The combined annual bill for a single location can land somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000 a year. Skip this, and the risk isn't small. Statutory damages for willful copyright infringement can run from $750 per song up into the tens of thousands per song if a court decides the infringement was intentional. A restaurant owner who assumes a personal streaming subscription covers the dining room speakers has quietly taken on legal risk worth far more than the license would have cost. That's a small example, but it points at the bigger lesson of this entire business. Almost none of the real costs are the ones printed on a supplier catalog. They're the ones buried in a lease clause, a delivery app contract, or a health code requirement that nobody reads carefully until something breaks. And plenty of things do break. Commercial kitchen equipment runs hard every single service, and mid-size restaurants typically budget several $1,000s a month just for repair and maintenance. Utility bills for a kitchen running exhaust hoods, refrigeration, and hot water constantly can run into the thousands monthly as well. None of these numbers are dramatic on their own. Stacked together, month after month, they quietly eat into the exact margin the owner was counting on.
Now, Let's talk about whether a restaurant business built entirely on this thin margin turnover model can actually survive at scale, because the honest answer is sometimes not. Take a well-known casual dining chain that, at its peak, operated hundreds of locations across the country and looked from the parking lot like an unstoppable machine. Full lots on weekends, a recognizable brand, decades of history. And yet several major casual dining chains have filed for Chapter 11 in the past decade, some more than once. The answer isn't that people stopped wanting to eat out. The answer is structural. Years of debt-financed expansion, long-term leases signed during a different economic climate, and razor-thin prime-cost margins meant that even a modest dip in foot traffic or a modest rise in food costs was enough to break the math connecting fixed costs to revenue. A restaurant chain with full parking lots and loyal regulars can still be one bad lease or one bad commodity price spike away from insolvency. The visible crowd in the dining room tells you nothing about whether the underlying financial structure can hold. So how does a restaurant actually make money, in plain mechanical terms, once it's past all of this? The core engine is simple. Average check times covers per night times nights open, minus prime cost, minus fixed costs. If a restaurant has fixed monthly operating costs, rent, insurance, licensing, software of around $25,000, and it runs at an average check of $35 with a combined prime cost of 65%, then it needs somewhere around 3,150 covers a month, roughly 105 covers a night, just to clear its fixed costs and start generating real profit.